welcome to R2-BD. It's a Star Wars show, I think. I sort of have a proper... I should have come up with... Since we started formatting this thing better, I have yet to come up with a proper intro for this thing. So I was like, hey, we talk about...
Star Wars.
And I just stopped there. And I just, that's it. But welcome back to R2-BD. We talk about Star Wars things, mostly expanded universe things here. My name is Joey.
I'm Jacob.
We're brothers. We like Star Wars. And today we're here to talk about more High Republic things. It's been a little bit since we talked High Republic things. Last time we did it, we did a whole High Republic special episode.
Yes.
Back when we would cover a bunch of things at once. We talked about the Acolyte, Light of the Jedi, and the Blade.
All phenomenal.
All really great. We do like the Acolyte around here.
Yes, we do.
We just lost people within our first minute. But otherwise. Yeah, we're talking comics today. We're talking High Republic comics. Well, more High Republic comics.
Yes, more.
As the Blade was. This is more directly related to our book last time we talked about the High Republic, though. Because this was being published... Also, it's worth noting, there's a lot of wind outside today. You can still hear that wind for some reason. There's literally nothing we can do about it. So... Anyway, this is more directly related to Light of the Jedi. This was publishing at the same time as Light of the Jedi came out when the whole High Republic initiative began. So, There Is No Fear is our first volume that we're talking about today. It is the first 5 issues written by Kevin Scott with art, or at least most of the art, by, I should have written this down, Ario and Edito, I believe is how you pronounce that. I could be butchering that. I often butcher comic creators' names like that,
yes.
as many faithful Fresh Race Comics listeners will be well aware.
Yeah.
But There's No Fear. I think also, importantly, I think let's talk about the High Republic in general. First off, if you have not read this, that's fine. It's a great introductory point for the High Republic. I think what I always appreciated about the early High Republic releases is that what they would do is the different formats of stories would still connect with each other, but would still be able to tell their own individual stories. Like, going back to this again, having not revisited Phase 1 for a while. This is a reread for both of us, obviously.
Yeah.
Having not revisited this in a while, I was surprised at just how easily accessible it was, like, without having read any of the other books or listened to the audio or anything like that. Like, it is just completely its own thing. And you could totally follow all 5 issues of this, no problem.
Yeah, there isn't any huge connection pieces that if they are relevant aren't explained.
Yeah.
Like mostly with Skier, for example, he has the most to do with events of Light of the Jedi.
Mm-hmm. Well, even then, like, Skier's only in the last, like, quarter of that book.
Yeah, it's during the last big battle.
Yeah, and
which any reference that event has gets thorough enough explanation. You're not lost.
Yeah, namely, Skier is our Trandoshan Jedi throughout all this. He lost his arm in this battle towards the end of Light of the Jedi, and right at the start, he only has one arm, and he's a reptile man. He's kind of growing it back the whole time, and so you're following that. But that's all you need to know. Otherwise, there's talk of, like, hyperspace disasters happening and things like that, and, like, that's literally it. Anything that happens in other media is well explained in this comic, and I think that's just really great. It is very much about just the core, like, I would say 3 characters, maybe 5 if you want to push it to Sarad and Tarek. But it's just about these couple, like, main characters here and what they're dealing with in their own little corner of the High Republic initiative.
I mean, yeah, they kind of touch on a couple of, like, of the bigger touch points that the High Republic will handle as it goes on. Namely the Nihil and the Drengir. Yeah,
the Nihil don't really get mentioned much, though. They're still off, like, mainly, like, being, like, the threat in the main books at the time.
They're only the center of, like, one cliffhanger and, like, the beginning of a comic, if I recall correctly.
Yeah. But no, it like I said, this is very much its own thing. This is actually, in being its own corner, it's also setting up its own things to deal with in larger High Republic things. The High Republic, we both read it this way, and went through it this way, is like, it is best enjoyed doing a little bit of everything, but this comic, again, can still be very much enjoyed on its own.
This can totally be enjoyed on its own, because it really spins into its own thing.
Yeah, totally. I would also say, first off, I say first off, I agree many times, It's worth noting also that this is a spoiler discussion, although we won't really be getting like into a lot of spoilers in this until like later on. We're laying down a lot of the groundwork that the comic lays down early on here.
And after another tangent or two, I'm sure.
Absolutely. Also, I would say, we should talk about a little bit, for those that haven't seen that big High Republic spectacular we did for the Acolyte and everything, let's talk about our history with the High Republic, because
yes,
you were kind of the guy that started my whole interest in the High Republic.
Yeah,
and,
so the long...
And realistically, here's the thing, I haven't credited you with this yet, because I don't want you to feel too good about yourself.
What is it?
But I think a lot of my want to do this show and to propose this to you for getting back into the expanded universe of Star Wars, like books and comics and everything, is because I got into the High Republic because of you.
That's
so
interesting.
It was the thing that got me to be like, maybe I should check out a bunch of other things that are currently coming out. Because I had fallen out of the expanded universe of Star Wars for a very long time. Although, of course, I had still faithfully kept up with everything like TV and movie-wise. But no, I hadn't really checked out a lot of the books and comics. And you're like, check out the High Republic. And I was like, sure, why not? And now we're here. Now we're doing this show.
Now we're here. Yeah, the short version of our personal history, as you said, is that I started the High Republic when it was still in its phase 1. That's just like its first initial releases. Mm-hmm. Like its first 3 books of all of its various different things happening.
Yeah.
And I had read the first book, Light of the Jedi, loved it. Mm-hmm. I think I was in the middle of the second one when I was like really insistent you should give this a shot.
Yeah.
And then by the time phase 1 was ending, I had caught up pretty much everything I could get my hands on at the time.
Yeah.
And I was like, dude, get into this phase. The phase 2 is happening. Jump on the ship with me.
And I did. It was I think it was during / towards the end of phase 2's release.
During the end of phase 2. It was
when I really got into it.
It was around the time of the audio drama, if I recall.
Yeah. And so it's I got into it. I sort of spiraled. I had, back when Twitter was a good place to be on, and when I was on Twitter, I had a big like massive High Republic reading thread that I was doing.
That's how I kept up with where you were outside of you telling me.
Yeah.
That was mainly for comics though.
Yeah. And,
I will say, though, too, the High Republic is what got me to read other Star Wars as well. I wasn't really reading Star Wars novels beforehand.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, totally. And so, yeah, again, I would say, like, I could probably draw a direct line between, like, you telling me to check out High Republic things and us doing this show. So,
yeah,
it's great.
Because we loved talking about it just between us.
Yeah.
And then we got interested in other things potentially happening around in the galaxy.
Yeah, totally. So... Here we have this. Here we have There Is No Fear, the first proper volume of High Republic comics. We have our core cast of characters. We have Keeve Trennis, sort of our main... She starts as a Padawan Jedi, but really she's a Jedi Knight. We have Skier, her master, our Trandoshan character. Avar Kriss ends up becoming one of the major pillars of this particular comic.
Mm-hmm. Which you thought, if you read the books, you'd been like, oh, Avar Kriss is going to clearly be a book character.
Yeah, she's like on the cover of Light of the Jedi and everything, but she has like, I think, one other appearance in the main High Republic books for phase 1.
Yeah.
And otherwise she's a comic character.
Which was a really interesting turn, as I wasn't on the comics right away.
Yeah. And then we have a couple other like minor side Jedi who end up being a big part of this. Two in particular, Sarek and Tarek, Sarek and Tarek. They're difficult to get right.
Yeah, that is difficult.
They're difficult to get right.
Especially after reading... It's difficult still after reading this issue, all of phase 1 appearances, and what we have up to in phase 3.
Yeah. Sarek and Tarek, I think are really interesting. I remember finding them fascinating. First of all, I love the idea for these characters as these like connected, like Force-sensitive twins.
They called them Bond twins, if I recall correctly.
Yeah, and yeah, so like every little thing they feel, not just physically, but within the Force as well, they feel in the other, which is very cool.
That as a concept I recall being interesting, and it's only slightly confusing when I read it the first time around.
Yeah. Also, for major characters in a High Republic comic, they're non-binary characters, and that's really cool. For a Star Wars comic in general that is being pushed as a major part of this publishing initiative for Lucasfilm, it's awesome. It's great to have these just non-binary representation in general. Great to see them front and center here, and they're cool characters. They really are. They don't get too much to do after a certain point in this volume.
Yeah,
but I'll say, like, as someone that's kept up with High Republic comics and just the High Republic in general, they stick around. They stick around, and they're great great characters. I really enjoy them whenever I see them.
They've had phenomenal development just down the long run.
Yeah.
But in this first volume, they sort of plateau in terms of usefulness.
Yeah, essentially, the usefulness goes. We introduce them and their force sensitiveness, their connection to each other. Sarat is taken by these plants called the Dringir. We'll get into them later.
Yeah.
And then from that point, Tarek kind of goes crazy, and they're both sort of consumed by the Dringir, and they become evil-ish, sort of. And they have to break them free from that.
Yeah.
So that's their whole thing in the first volume. But otherwise, I love their characterization beforehand. Also, just there's. So I do really like this one scene where it's the first time that the book like outright says that they are non-binary. I want to say is it Vernestra Rowe that's talking to Avar, and she calls one of the twins he, I think, and it's just this small moment where Avar like looks at Rowe and is like they, and then they just move on.
Yeah,
and it's just a small moment of just correcting someone in just a polite way and just being like, hey, cool, now that you know that, we move on, because it's an important part of, I think, non-binary representation that you don't often see, where it's like people often get things like that wrong, and there is a healthy, simple way to communicate that and to continue to show that, and just move on and like not carry any ill will from that interaction. It's corrected, they move on, it's never brought up again. Simple as. Mm-hmm. And from that point on, everyone else is aware of their non-binariness. I suppose
that's I guess for lack of better words.
Yeah. Also, as far as side characters, since I brought her up, Vernestra Rowe is here as well. Who
a little briefly, but yes.
Yeah, who more, let's say, more casual High Republic fans will know as being from the Acolyte.
I would say in my brain, she is still firmly kind of a you need to know her.
Yeah.
An area.
Mm-hmm.
I do think it's interesting that she went from not like obscure, so to speak,
mm-hmm.
but like only like a few more notable appearances to she's the face of the High Republic Book Initiative now. Yeah, totally. Yeah, I mean, even outside of the High Republic, she is headlining a full-on just regular Star Wars book for the Acolyte tie-ins with her and Indara, that one Acolyte novel, which is very cool. And also, I'm just very happy that we're getting Acolyte novels, and that it's not they're both prequel novels, of course, for the Acolyte. But I just like that we're getting that. I like that we're seeing that. That's just. Will we get more? I'm not counting on it necessarily.
I mean, if Solo can continue outside of the Han Solo trilogy's cancellation, I think the Acolyte can somehow survive in the expanded universe outside of
I'd like to
one
think,
season of TV.
Because I like to think, especially because these books and anything what coming out from the Acolyte presumably will all be prequel stuff by and large. Mm-hmm. It's all going to be closer to the High Republic, and I'm okay with that just being another phase of it, so to speak.
Yeah, totally. It's this interesting time because there is still a pretty large gap between the end of the main publishing initiative that they're doing for the High Republic and when the Acolyte takes place. So there's more time to chart. There's plenty of novels to throw in there, plenty of comics that you could write in there. Hell, we've already had an Acolyte tie-in comic with the Kelnako one-shot, which is pretty good.
That was pretty good.
Yeah, so it is great to see that. Even if these things were all announced before the Acolyte's cancellation, it is nice to see that there is still some part of Lucasfilm that believes in this initiative and is willing to tell these stories. We're personally big fans of.
I think Lucasfilm has some belief that this would work on a book comic front because they already know the High Republic works on a book comic front.
Yeah, totally. I agree. So. Back to this. Oh yeah, back to Vern though. Vernestra. Her Padawan shows up in this at one point. I forgot Imri was in this.
Yes, I did too.
I was like, oh shit, there's Imri doing an autopsy on a Hutt. All right, sure.
which as the one other Jedi points out, the Council is very questioned about.
Yeah. It's interesting. It's cool. And also, I remember one of those things where like I would love to cover pretty much every High Republic thing on this show someday. Because I think Vern and Imri have just a really cool relationship and a lot of the other things. But yeah, I don't know. Back on our major characters though. I love Keeve and Skier's relationship. I think they're just one of my favorite things about this first volume that really makes it work for me.
They are sort of the heart and soul of the main story that we're partaking in.
Yeah, I love the sort of training scenes between them. I love that one flashback that happens in like the start of issue 4, whatever. The issue after Skier gets or Skier is revealed to have been taken over by the Dringir as well. I think that flashback is really, really great.
Yes, it's a very smart flashback.
Yeah, totally.
To show that, to show what their connection is like. We all know that the anticipation of a Padawan master relationship is that they believe in each other, or more accurately, the master is supposed to believe in the Padawan, and it kind of goes backwards.
Yeah.
But it's always nice to see when that is actually shown.
Yeah. Oh, totally.
Because we've seen in this series that that's not always the case.
Yeah, totally. That's great. I love that. There's actually this great moment that I had to write down this line from in the first issue, where Kiva says something along the lines of, she like kind of repeats the whole like I want the force was with me, etc. Or there is no fear.
Yeah.
There is no there is no fear. There is only something. Whatever the whole mantra is. She starts saying that, and Skier kind of like stops her and says like, there is more to being a Jedi than parroting ancient rhetoric. Which I think is really fucking cool. It's just a great sentiment. It's one of those things that makes Skier a really fascinating character in this era for me, because I would say the High Republic as a whole is an era for the Jedi where they're at their most,
creative, perhaps?
Well, most creative, yeah, because of course, the High Republic is called the High Republic because it is literally the height of the Jedi. But for them, it's also when they are most assured in themselves, I think, when they most believe in that rhetoric, when they are really fueled by that, and would have someone like Skier here who looks at it and says, "No, it's just ancient rhetoric. Stop that. Be a fucking Jedi. Feel that in yourself." Like it's a great moment. I really love that between them.
It kind of reminded me of a scene from Light of the Jedi, if I recall correctly, with Porter, who has some line that goes like along the lines of like someone's like, "Oh, you're like kind of weird," like so to speak. Like you're like really jokey. You're not like what I anticipate like a Jedi Master to be like once. And he's like, "What? You want me to be dead?"
Yeah. Oh God, it's great. It's fucking great. I love that. It's almost like Jedi are at their most interesting when they are individuals and are not just slaves to their ancient religion. It's great. It's why Ahsoka's a great character. She's the first example that came to mind, but like there's a reason that she is ousted from the Order is because in a roundabout way it is because she's different.
Yeah,
so
absolutely.
More on that later. I don't know. I'm sure we'll talk all about that someday.
God I'm sure.
We should just cover all of Clone Wars. Fuck. We do get a small Yoda appearance in the scene on the Starlight Beacon, so that's cool. We do get the retelling of the Starlight Beacon opening and ceremony, where Avar Kriss has made Marshal of Starlight Beacon.
I think we see that in all of the first outings for the avenues for the High Republic, if I recall correctly.
Yeah, for the young adult novel, I think for the middle grade novel as well. I think they kind of show it because that is sort of like there are key moments throughout the High Republic where all of our different stories intersect, and they should be at least phase 1 is structured this way. Phase 1 is structured in that there are 3 points of beginning, middle, and end where you see all of our characters from all our different areas of the High Republic converge somehow, and we check up with them and we see where they're all at. So the ceremony is one of them. There's a certain one. They're all sort of chronicled throughout the main adult novels.
Yeah, the main adult novel is where the thrust of the story is happening.
The Rising Storm portrays the second one.
Yeah, and
Fallen Star portrays the third one. So I like that as well. So you see that in the comic here. You see everyone kind of converging that moment there. It's cool. What is this? I have a note here. Keeve and the Redati. Oh, the bugs on the planet. That's right. I forgot about the bugs on the planet. I was like, what is that? Sorry, and their connection to the Force, because the bugs have a connection to the Force as well.
Well, of course they do. Every living being does.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Just kind of going through my notes here for the first issue.
I think on that note, I'll just say though, I think it's really fascinating the way that the art shows Keeve's connection to the Force when she tunes into another creature.
I think that's probably why I wrote that note, because there's a great
that
fucking page. Yeah. Oh my god, that's great.
I love the way it's always shown whenever Keeve, or really anyone really, but it's mostly Keeve because she's our POV for by and large.
Yeah.
Whenever she does it, it's always these great splash pages usually.
Yeah. I love that.
I love the use of purple to show how the Force being kind of cosmic.
Yeah.
In appearance to her.
Mm-hmm. Also talking about how cool Keeve is, she has a double-bladed green lightsaber. And I like that. That's simple. I love it.
It kind of sets her apart visually from, like, just from her peers, so to speak.
Oh, totally. Because, I mean, when you make a sea of Jedi that looks essentially like the end of Attack of the Clones,
yeah.
How do you make them stand out? Well, first off, there are two ways. One, you can make them an outright alien. You have Skier as a Trandoshan here. You know, there are various alien Jedis, and they have a distinctive feature then. But if they're a human Jedi, what do? Give them a cool fucking lightsaber.
A lot of times that's more a yellow blade.
Yeah, yellow
are
blade,
much more common.
Be it like an uncommon color, or a double blade, or something weird, just along those lines.
Or you could have that weird double blade that oh god, what's her name has?
Who?
She, in Into the Dark, she's got the blade that.
Oh yeah, it's almost like an Inquisitor saber. Yeah, where it like flips out. Okay, yeah, I know what you mean. Yeah, it kind of looks like the one from oh god, Rise of Skywalker. When Dark Ray shows up and the two blades go.
Oh yeah, that.
It's exactly that.
It's
blade.
exactly that
one.
That saber.
Who has that? Is that Orla that has that?
Yes.
Orla Drenny has that.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Sorry. Oh man. Sorry for those that don't know High Republic shit. Anyway, Keeve has made a Jedi Knight, and that's nice. Though she still hangs around Skier a lot, which is interesting. Just a long-running trend, I guess, when you're made a Jedi Knight, right down to Anakin Skywalker.
I noticed that a lot too. Like
when you're made a knight, you just never really stop hanging around your master, do you?
I noticed that too. Like when your first missions seem to always be with your master, but you're now theoretically the same rank.
Yeah, and even when you leave the Jedi Order, you fight your master as a turn to the dark side Sith Lord.
Which,
yeah.
I mean...
Anyway, there's a small moment of the Nihil here. You get it's like exactly one scene where the Nihil have previously attacked a ship where there's a dead hut, and so you sort of see the aftermath of a Nihil attack, which is interesting.
With one lone guy that Skier mercilessly murders, essentially.
Mercilessly,
yeah.
He finds the Nihil and destroys them. The remaining, like two guys there or whatever.
I think it's just one guy.
Yeah. Skier's acting kind of pissy this whole time though. There's something clearly wrong, and if it hadn't been for the fact that just previously I said that Skier gets controlled by the Great Drenigear at one point, it's a pretty good mystery.
I think we also didn't say what it is. It was especially interesting on a reread when you know it, of course.
Mm-hmm.
That why is he taken over by the Drenigear? Because he doesn't have his connection to the Force.
He is losing it.
Losing it's a better apt description.
Yeah, it's really, really interesting. He is, as Skier puts it later, like, he's kind of drifting back and forth between being able to be controlled by the Drenigear because he is not feeling his strong connection to the Force that he previously had, which is a cool idea to explore. Although I do not think it was explored to its fullest potential in this volume.
No, as it seems to be as just portrayed in this, it seems to be like that Skier is connecting that feeling of not that connection with the Force with the loss of his arm.
Yeah.
Like. The fact he is no longer physically whole is affecting him emotionally, and that is affecting how he connects to the Force.
Well, I think when he starts talking about losing his connection to the Force, they literally redraw the scene of him losing his arm in that space battle at the end of Light of the Jedi.
Yeah.
So so there's this direct connection between like Skier. He's doubting himself. Like that is, I would say, although it's the name of the story arc, and the volume being called "There Is No Fear" is like. It is, I think, is once again that ancient Jedi rhetoric of Skier doubting himself. Like, no, of course there's fear. Obviously there's fear. The Jedi are bullshit.
the whole big event of the High Republic is the fact that the Jedi have fear.
Yeah, like
it literally forced the main thing of the High Republic is forcing the Jedi to realize, by and large, they have feelings.
Yeah. It's almost like a lot of Star Wars is about how the Jedi fucking suck.
Crazy, I know.
even when you're in an era like the High Republic, where it is supposed to be the Jedi at their height, of course they're doing cool Force shit all the time. Yeah, sure, they're controlling storms. That's great and all, but
this is also when they theoretically be at the most of their hubris.
Yeah, exactly, and that is why. Again, I can't talk about later High Republic things for those that don't know, but there are later High Republic things that show the direct connection between the fall of the Jedi in the prequels to how the High Republic, the era known as the High Republic, comes to an end.
Absolutely.
Which is also why I'm very excited to do our next episode.
Oh, I
do
know.
our next episode. If you don't know what it is already, stick around to the end. We're going to talk about it. But, oh god, back to the main comic. Let's talk about Star Wars swears. Swears in Star Wars. This is a common thing I think in a lot of sci-fi also, is to be like, in the future we have different swear words, like criff and cruck and various CR or KR words. I'm looking at my shelf of Doctor Who New Adventures right now, where Bernice Summerfield uses words like that all the fucking time. And there are just these moments where I think, although I don't mind it, I think sometimes using words like that can kind of take me out of a story, because I'm like, okay, but I've heard Han Solo say hell. So, like,
right, we know...
I've heard Clone Troopers say damn. I like, at least, if these mild swears exist, I'm very sure that fuck exists in Star Wars.
Right? Like, I understand from, like, a publishing perspective. You could write out the word criff.
Yeah. Or how they say shit in Andor. Like...
Oh, they do, don't
they? They say shit, or at least, I remember at least bastard in Andor. Like...
Yeah, these are all regular words.
Yeah. So, like, I don't know. I also get you're writing a comic, so an all ages comic, because the idea is supposed to be for all ages. But like, I don't know. I don't mind it, but there's always just some small part of my brain that's like, okay, I'm kind of taken out just for a second, and now I'm back in. You know,
right?
Like, it's all right.
I think it's only maybe noticeable because Keeve swears a lot.
Yeah, that is the idea. Is that like Keeve accidentally keeps like swearing around these like highly esteemed Jedi masters and public officials, and it's like, okay, cool, that's a funny little gag. But again, just a small part of me is just continuously taken out of it for just a moment, and then I'm right back in. So, whatever. Running through a couple notes here to get through some plot. There's a healing salve on a planet called Sedri Minor. There are people going missing there. There's a little punk named Bartol. I fucking hate him. Let's get back to Jedi rhetoric, though, because Bartol's friend, when he goes down into this cave with Keeve, is dead. And there's
consumed by the drink gear, I believe.
Yeah. And there's this great moment where, in seeing this dead friend, and this little punk kid Bartol is like crying over it, Keeve is like, he is one with the Force. And once again, that is just that fucking shitty Jedi rhetoric that helps them rationalize everything they do. And I love that. I love seeing that, because it is just showing how fucking indoctrinated Keeve is, and how every Jedi is indoctrinated literally from their birth. Like,
which always makes it interesting when we know of fallen Jedi.
Yeah, yeah. Okay, so we can talk about this.
Yeah, we can talk about this, because this is a known fact.
Let's talk about this, and we don't have the answer to this yet, so we're not really spoiling anything. If you read either the script or listen to the audio drama of Dooku Jedi Lost, which we have covered on R2-BD.
Yes, we have covered that.
In a Lost episode that we had to talk about briefly, in a much briefer context in one of our catch-up episodes, or the only catch-up episode. I don't know why I pretended like there's more.
Yeah, right? We didn't lose that many episodes.
But no, in that, Dooku is looking at a list of fallen Jedi, and Keeve Trennis is a name in there. Now, Kevin Scott is the writer of that thing. I'm looking at.
He also has another High Republic thing listed in that audio as well, which is really fun.
Yeah, but what did they mention? The
Nameless.
The Nameless. That's right. But no, okay. So Kevin Scott is the writer of that. Kevin Scott is the writer of this comic. Kevin Scott clearly has shit planned, and at the time of recording this, we don't know what that is. But we know that for some reason, Keeve is no longer a Jedi at some point.
Yeah, she becomes immensely disillusioned by whatever is happening, and we just don't know yet.
Yeah. So, fascinating stuff. Let's talk about the Drengir, though, as well, in relation to the Jedi, because the Drengir are about the closest we get to the actual dark side in the High Republic, because we have to write this within a time where the Sith aren't really a thing.
The Sith are continuously hiding.
Are believed to be extinct, yeah. So we have the Drengir here, which are these really cool-looking sort of plant monster things. They look like shambling mounds from D&D. I love them.
Yeah.
But they are plants imbued with the dark side, essentially.
Right, and they eat meat, as they say.
Yeah.
Not people, meat.
Yes. So while they are definitely monsters, there is this idea of to be corrupted by the Drengir is to accept the dark side in a way.
Yeah, absolutely.
Which is definitely the parallel that Kevin Scott is drawing between Skier losing his connection to the Force and being drawn in by the Drengir.
They literally offer him a whole body. He gets this cool vine arm thing.
He gets an arm that the Drengir give him. it's almost Anakin-like. It's almost like the cave painting sequence from the Micro Series in Volume 2. How he uses in the cave painting in Micro Series Volume 2, Anakin uses the arm the mysterious painting on the cave wall uses this monstrous metallic arm to save the day, and then it continues to grow and consume him. And it's kind of, I wonder if that's the inspiration. Because if so, that's a really cool idea.
I wouldn't be surprised if there was some level of inspiration on that.
I really like that.
Instead of mechanical, though, it's literally natural, so to speak.
Yeah. Yeah.
And the Drengir themselves give, like, the short version of their history, which is more fleshed out in the young adult book.
Yeah, yeah. But as it's presented here, it's simple enough.
Yeah, it's simple enough.
We do get a brief glimpse of Sith in their origins.
We do, yeah.
It's like one panel. But
yeah, it's like a one panel on one of those Force pages, if I recall correctly.
Yeah, totally. Yep. It's cool. It's cool. The Drengir are also living inside this Hutt corpse, which I find really cool. It's a great sequence where they're inspecting the Hutt corpse, and the plant, the vine, the Drengir things just come out of the inside of the Hutt. It's very cool. Just a great visual. Let's see what else here. One of the only things that I thought was kind of like half baked in this was the whole people on Sidri Minor kind of rising up against their Solman, the guy that is kind of looking over them and kind of knew about the Drengir here and was letting it consume his people.
This guy knew about two things. He knew that there was something living and taking people. Mm-hmm. And he also knew the Hutts were coming, because he worked for them, if I recall.
Yeah, because essentially with the last issue of this volume, and it's also somewhat half-baked, because it essentially boils down a lot of the really cool work that Scott was doing throughout this whole volume into like a big fight sequence in the end, where the Hutt cartel arrives, and we meet Mariarga the Benevolent, I think is how you pronounce it. I have it written down. I still don't know if I'm saying it right.
Don't you love Star Wars words you never hear said?
Gotta love it. But yeah, no, so they arrive. It essentially becomes this big fight. The Drengir turn on the Hutts as well, so the Hutts and the Jedi team up to fight them. Meanwhile, there's this revolution against Solman from his people that he was letting die, and the Drengir kill. And that is nice. But again, somewhat half-baked. I would have liked to if we were going to do this plot with Solman, I think it would have felt stronger if it was its own plot rather than being lumped in with the larger Drengir and Hutt shit.
Yeah, personally. It probably would have been stronger for sure.
Yeah. Also, Rancors. I love a good Rancor.
Yeah, good Rancor.
Love a good Rancor. And the volume ends on a cliffhanger I'd forgotten about. I've read the whole thing before, so I wasn't like, oh god, I have to read the next one immediately, but Skier is dying because he's severed from the Drengir. And so that's the end of the volume. But that's that.
It's one of the many times Keeve will go through this emotional process.
Yeah, Keeve. Again, can't say too much, but Keeve and Skier's relationship is strained, to say the least.
To say the least.
Yeah. But there is no fear. It's still a really great volume, and actually, it's one of those things that I think rewards rereads essentially. By going back to it like after you've done much more High Republic stuff.
Oh, it absolutely is. Well, because you gain. You just know more. Mm-hmm. You could read more behind. You could see more of the galaxy turning, so to speak.
Yeah, totally.
And then in this case, you look at Keeve, all the character growth she's gone through, and look at her and go, look at where she's begun.
Yeah, totally.
You could see it developing in front of you, and you just didn't realize it before.
Yeah, it's very cool. But also, as I've said before, like it's still a very much a volume of the comic that can be enjoyed on its own. You do not need any of their High Republic stuff to get into it.
No, absolutely not. This
is
absolutely great on its own.
Yeah, totally. But it can't be enjoyed on its own.
What?
This show. Because you gotta listen to all of it. Listen to all of R2-BD. Go through all of our R2-BD and listen to us talk about Star Wars things of various kinds. We have recently changed the format of R2-BD. If you go back to older episodes, we did longer episodes where we talked about a bunch of things all together, but now we do these individual episodes where we talk about one thing at a time. And it has served us well.
I think this has been a positive change for sure.
So. I've certainly felt very great about these recent episodes that we've been doing. So, and I also feel great about our future episodes coming up.
Indeed.
In the future. Next episode should either be Andor Season 1, because we're going to review Andor Season 1 before Season 2 comes out. Mm-hmm. Maybe better during Season 2's release is when we'll review it. So, it'll be somewhere around there. It'll either be that, or our next book, which is The Living Force by Jason Jackson Miller, I think is his name.
I think.
The writer of that really famous Legends Obi-Wan novel that people cling to.
Uh-huh.
But yeah, so we're doing that. I think we could also start talking about other things we have coming up, reading-wise.
I don't think it's going to hurt, no.
I think comic-wise, I think we want to get back to the main Star Wars comic. We previously covered the first 2 volumes and up to the event Vader Down, so we'll be continuing that at some point with Rebel Jail, which I'm very excited for. And also we'll be doing my next book. I chose our next book after Living Force.
You did.
Which we're going to cover Master and Apprentice by Claudia Gray. I'm very excited to talk about that. Claudia Gray has quickly become one of my absolute favorite Star Wars novelists. The Fallen Star really sold me on her.
Oh, so, absolutely.
She's fantastic. So be on the lookout for all that when it comes out. In the meantime, my link tree and Jacob's link to his Blue Sky will be in the description below. You can follow us wherever you want to follow us. Subscribe to the channel, Blood Donut Studios. Any and all support means the absolute world to us. And I think that about does it. So thank you all so much for watching. Until next time, this has been Joey Morgan.
I'm Jacob.
Goodbye.